Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Pursuit Live. Joining me, as always, is your creator and co-host, Mr. Dave Hawkins.
What's going on, everybody? I'm excited for tonight. We got a good show coming.
I'm your producer, Chris, and joining us is one hell of a guest. I think this is going to be a fun show. I think we're going to talk, this is going to be a good conversation, and I'm looking forward to this. So, tonight, we bring you the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. Chad Allen Jones.
Well, I definitely don't need that introduction, but I appreciate that, guys. Appreciate y'all having me on.
Chad, thank you for taking the time out to join us. So, if you guys are ready, let's just dive right into it.
Yeah, I think we just start with the setting that you're blessing us with right now with that trophy room. Yeah, I kind of want to hold my hands up in the background here, and that's quite impressive, man. How many years of hunting do you think you have in the background right there?
Well, really, I mean, like this room's kind of wrapped, so I mean, you're seeing kind of a portion of it, but
okay.
That space right there is probably over the last 7 years, probably 7 years.
Wow, that's I don't have nothing to say to that. Well done. Anyway, let's get into it. Let's give you an actual formal introduction and we'll get the show rolling. So, yes, we got Chad Allen Jones joining us tonight. Chad, like we said, thank you very much for taking the time, tuning in with us. We appreciate it. And I know all the listeners and the viewers are going to appreciate it as well. So, in this beginning section, what we want to do is we want to let the viewers know, who you are. Really, where do you call home? What got you into the woods? What got you hunting? Really, what put you on the path to where you've been recently?
Well, I'm Chad Jones. I grew up in McKinney, Texas, which is about 30 miles north of Dallas, and so that's been home my whole life. Obviously, went off to Lubbock through college at Texas Tech, and then come back, moved back to this area. Just I don't know. Texas has just always been home to me. I mean, I've traveled all over, but I just can't bring myself to leave. But anyway, yeah. In terms of what got me started hunting was my dad. I guess what you'd kind of say, just born into it. When I was 4 years old, he started taking me and my brother hunting out in some East Piney Woods, a couple hours, 2-3 hours from here. And, just trying to learn. I mean, we were just kids wanting to play with bugs and sticks and kill snakes and whatever. And so, but that's like one of my fondest memories of, once we started school, getting out of school and loading up in the pack truck with the trailer and everything and going to the hunting camp. I mean, that was just, man, that's just the best. And, but yeah, anyway, so that all started when I was 4, and then I guess got my first rifle when I was 7, and just been killing stuff along the way. Got into bow hunting. I picked that up when I was about 13.
Okay.
But that was quite the struggle. And the only reason I started trying at such early age because my dad was a bow hunter and my brother was bow hunting. And so I was like, oh, how hard can it be? And but I went on a pretty long spell. I didn't get my first animal with the bow until I was 17. So it was quite the journey.
Yeah, I mean, you earned your stripes without a doubt. I mean, what was some of the issues or, just trouble you had early on, just the nature of archery hunting itself?
Well, I mean, just not understanding the little things, because like I say, well, I had a rifle in my hand and I, shot deer and countless wild pigs, especially
Mhm.
here in Texas. It just overran with them. I mean, just hundreds and hundreds of them. And so it was almost one of those deals. If I could see it, I could shoot it. Right.
Gotcha.
And with a bow, all of that gets drawn into a
Yep.
very short window. And of course, at 13, 14 years old, I wasn't pulling 70 pounds. I'm struggling to get my 40-pound
Right.
minimum.
Yeah.
And so so it's kind of one of those things to where, part of it is it's not the smooth, finesse draw and not being seen. It's like air drawing, trying to just get it pulled back. And,
Yeah. Yep.
I mean,
Yep.
it was just a struggle. And I'm like, man, these deer are stupid, and it got frustrating,
Yeah.
but so it was just years of that. My dad's like, don't give up. It's just hard.
Yep.
It's just a lot more challenging, and so a lot of times, I would start out bow hunting and then just kind of resorted back to my rifle because,
Sure.
I'm just like, man, it's just frustrating. Or I would see deer and they're not close enough to shoot. And
Mhm.
so, but then once I got my first kill, man, it was game
Oh, yeah.
over. Then it was
It
almost impossible for me to go back to a rifle. I
exactly.
was just like the adrenaline, the intensity of just how close everything is. Y'all know how it is. I mean, it's
Yeah.
indescribable.
It's such a common theme in the archery hunting world where if it grabs a hold of you, right away. There's nothing
Oh,
wrong
yeah.
with shotgun hunting or rifle hunting or crossbow hunting, but specifically like with a compound bow, like for white-tailed deer, let's say, there's no in between. You either like, all right, that was fun, or it's like, no, this is what I want to do. This is my
Yeah.
passion.
Yeah. This
now.
is it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's a
Yeah.
funny saying I like to say, because we all went through the same struggles. If you want to learn patience, start bow hunting. If you want to lose patience, keep bow hunting. And it just keeps going round and round. It's just one of those things.
Yeah. Because it
But
doesn't stop on
no,
the front of your journey.
no.
You
And
know?
it's such a humbling thing. You got nobody to blame but yourself. And but at the end of the day, when you get that harvest on the ground, you got that meat in the freezer, you got the stories, you're sitting around the campfire that night. I mean, it's worth all the ounce of sweat, hanging the stands, going through the summer, whatever it is, all that prep work, and you get that one shot, and you did it. You got it done.
Right.
It's just there's nothing better. A lot of us played sports. It's very close to that dopamine rush, like at any high level of sports you played. But I think it's better at this point.
Yeah, it is, and it's an adrenaline high that, that first experience, that's what you're chasing every time.
Yes.
You're like, man, I want to feel that again,
That's
and but each experience is different every time. It's
Right.
it's incredible, and so, I've got two girls. My oldest daughter, she started hunting with me when she was
Nice.
10. Of course, she's 16
Nice.
now. And she's really my good luck charm. Every time she's gone hunting, she's killed something her first sit. And, of course, she's
Nice.
like, Dad, I don't understand why you spend like weeks at a time with deer. This is easy."
Yeah.
You know?
Get out of here. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I was like, yeah. So anyway, but my youngest, I'm still working on her. She's a
All
little
right.
impatient. So she's kind of like, I don't like sitting here if deer doesn't show up within 5 minutes. So
Yeah, it's understandable. That's a young age still, but that's awesome. That's awesome, especially to hear that the girls, your daughters, are getting into it. That's all of us. We're all a big proponent of that. Getting as many females out there as we can. Any type of hunting, fishing, whatever you want to do, by all means. Like there's plenty of room out there for all of us to enjoy it together.
well, especially kids in general. I
Yeah,
mean, this day and age, the hunting community and the hunting heritage it's becoming lost. A lot of these kids, I'm going, man, that's how I grew up. And I'm
Right.
going, I couldn't imagine not at least letting my kids experience that lifestyle. If they don't like it, that's fine. But it's like, I have to at least expose them to it,
Absolutely.
And so,
I mean,
I don't
Chris
know.
has a perfect way to describe our show because we actually, do we lean hunting heavy, let's say, as far as most of our guests and our topics? Yeah, without a doubt. But by all means, this is an outdoor venue show. It doesn't matter what you do. If you're out in the outdoors and you're enjoying it, Chris, what do you call this show if you had to explain it to somebody who's never seen it?
I mean, besides the best outdoor related podcast on the net
besides
right
that.
now.
Yeah, besides that.
No, I mean that's really it. Is we're everything outdoors. It doesn't matter what you're doing. If you're out there and you're doing it the right way, we want to hear your story, because your story is our story. We're a part of this community, and we're
The
all
Deer
in it
Camp
together.
slogan. It's a good slogan.
Oh, that one. All
Yeah.
right. So yeah, so it's like, all right. So this is a little bit longer of a statement, but like growing up, Dave's a little bit younger, so he doesn't remember this. But back in the days, like, we all went to deer camp, and what did we do? We sat around the fire and we shot the shit and told stories that were mostly bullshit. But like somewhere along the way, we lost that. And to be honest with you, it was probably in the late 2000s through the 2000 teens that we really lost that hunting camp mentality, and we were delivered this wonderful gift with social media.
Yeah.
That now we can connect with people throughout this community across the world. Like right now, there are people that watch this show coast to coast, sometimes in Africa if they stay up late, but it's given us a way to sit there and connect and open that campfire to everybody. So it's not just the same guys you're seeing every year. You're hearing stories from different parts of the country where people have never had experiences. Like, I've been lucky enough to hunt in Texas. You live in Texas, so you're lucky enough to hunt it all the time. But like Dave's never hunted Texas yet. He's able to hear your stories. We're able to hear from people in Colorado, Idaho. We're able to share stories from the Northeast, and it's just a great way for everybody to join the conversation, because right now we're under attack. Yeah, let's face it, the outdoor community is under attack from every angle, and we all need now more than ever to stick together. And this is a great way for everybody to join together and be a part of this team, that this community that we all belong to.
Yeah, I agree 100%, and honestly, I feel like COVID kind of helped a lot of that aspect, because when everyone got basically put on lockdown and had to work remotely and all this, so many people started going out and camping that did, people that had never camped before, like
Yep.
all of a sudden going buying campers and going out and tent camping. And so, it kind of started propelling them into the outdoor lifestyle. And, a lot of people that don't really understand it or wasn't really for it, at least they're kind of trying, dipping their toe in the water, and then you see, people with a platform like Cam Hanes in social media and how many people that reaches, and they see him doing these hunts and that just the outreach for it. And it's like, it's such good for the community. But now you see all the antis that are trying to suppress that content. I mean, it's just, it's a struggle, but the problem is us that grew up that way. You're going, man, how do people not
Right.
relate to that? It's like, I just don't understand, how people don't get that, because there's a lot of people's lifestyles that I don't agree with, but I'm not going to go and report all of your posts just because I don't agree with it. Now I kind of understand if you're posting a kill shot and blood's just like pouring all over the
Sure.
place, something more graphic, I get it. But dude, really, I mean, just holding up a deer head or holding up a fish or whatever, I mean,
Yep.
It's like, come on.
Yeah, I mean, and that is definitely in this social media age. And as hunters and outdoors men and women, I think that actually falls under the ethics part of it now. Not necessarily that they got to teach it in hunter's ed, but if you're going to post something out there for the world to see, it's not
Right.
just going to your immediate core friends who maybe they don't even
Right.
think about it. You really got to take a step back sometimes and look at this harvest picture that you're so excited to share in a positive way. But just like you said, without maybe going into all the details, really look at what you're putting out there for the world. There is creative ways to make your harvest look as natural as possible. It's about celebrating the animal at that point. So you want to make this animal look as clean as possible, as professional as possible. Doesn't matter what level you're at, because the minute you hit share on your story or you post it, it's out there.
Right.
It takes one untasteful post, even if you didn't mean to, and you're in a world of hell, whether it's with your own personal account and on the bigger picture, for us in the community. So it's unfortunate that we have to talk about it as much as we do, but it's worth always touching on. Just execute some common sense, Social media is great when it's used in the right ways, but it's such a fine line where somebody can just make an accident, a simple accident, and it puts us back that much further. So
Yeah, I
it
agree.
just
Because things that, we post a buck, the grip and grin, and
yeah,
we're not offended by it because we relate to it. But
yep,
somebody that sees this that doesn't understand that life, it's like, oh my God, he's holding a dead animal. I don't understand
right,
why you want to do that, like Jeffrey Dahmer or something. You know what I mean?
right,
So
right,
you
right.
kind of have to look at an aspect of people don't understand, but then you see the flip side where someone's going, all right, I don't want to, I'll clean any blood off. I'll, cut the tongue so nothing's
Yep,
hanging out, make it
yep,
look as tasteful as possible. But then you get the backlash. You're going, oh, well, they're just killing it for Instagram posts because look how pretty and clean it is. It's like, no, it's because
right.
we're trying our best to not offend
Yeah,
somebody, and
exactly.
it's just, I don't know, man. The struggle's real.
That is one of those that is a rabbit hole without a doubt. I know for a fact we've gone down it a couple times on some shows, but no, we totally agree. We're on the same page with you, and a lot of the guys, all the guys and teams, men and women that we associate with, they're all on the same page. And it's very rare that you actually come across somebody who doesn't really align with that. They're a true outdoors man or woman, hunter, angler. It doesn't matter. They're, for the most part, people do the right thing. They try and do the right thing whenever they can. As far as your hunting journey and your hunting experience, is there one early success story that really sticks out for you, or maybe one scenario where you weren't necessarily successful, but you learned so much from that scenario? Not necessarily with the harvest, but just something maybe archery hunting in general that you learned a lot from.
I mean, obviously, my first bow kill was, I would say, probably the trademark uh, of what kicked off that passion for my hunting journey in terms of especially bow hunting. Um, but I really think the struggle in between, from when I started to when I killed one, is really what made me learn the most. You know, just because I had to keep trying. It's, I think back, if I would have just gave up on it, like, man, I'm just going to stick to gun hunting. This is easy because I know I can kill something. Then there's so many things that would have never have transpired, that I was able to do through archery. Maybe not have gone down the path and opened doors in the archery world that I've
Right.
done. Met a lot of really cool people through just the archery community, not just really hunting in general.
Mhm.
And so to me, like, just not giving up on it, because I see a lot of people that's new to bow hunting. A lot of people reach out all the time, just asking a ton of questions, and I always try to be super helpful. You know, I know, like, you see people with real big platforms won't even respond,
Yeah,
and I get it. I mean, they get inundated with a lot of stuff, but at the end of the day, you have to realize these people started where, or you started where they are,
exactly.
um, and you want to be helpful, and have someone else to just stick with that passion to do it, because they're the future of bow hunting, and I mean, because eventually I'll get to an age to where I can't do it, and so that's why it's like, man, but I would love to be able to go sit in a grandpa's chair in a blind and watch my
Yep,
girls archery hunt, and I
absolutely.
film it for them or something,
Yep,
but
yep.
it's I don't know. I mean, that perseverance window was probably,
Okay.
because you're right, man. It's a frustrating time,
Yeah,
especially as a teenager. I'm like, man, this is a waste of my time. I'm getting
yeah,
up here freezing to death. I'm in a tree stand, so I'm getting rained on, freezing
yeah,
cold.
yeah.
When we got, uncles or cousins or whoever's hunting with us, friends hunting with us, they're all in box blinds with little buddy heaters and
Yep, yep.
eating
They got
little
the
daddy
coffee
snack
going. Yep,
cakes. And
yep.
I can't eat anything because it's loud. And I was like, man, this sucks. Go hunt stupid,
That's
you
it.
know?
Hey, but I tell you about, I looking back on it, I know I look back when you're cutting your teeth as that young hunter, first year hunter, there's nothing better when you look back
Yeah.
at some of those scenarios, and you honestly appreciate with time and age. Like, I appreciate all the time like my father spent with me, my grandfather on my dad's side, taking that time. Like, all right, we weren't quiet. We were talking. We were noisy. We couldn't sit still, but they kept us going. They kept pulling us out there, and they put us on that path to where we're at. So that's, eventually, hopefully, God willing, I could be in that same scenario, just like you're talking about with your daughters. And I'm sure there's nothing better at that point.
Yeah, and it made me realize, especially later in life, because in my mind at that time, seeing my dad being successful or my brother being successful, it puts that pressure where you're going, well, man, I want to be the man of the camp that
Yeah,
walks
yeah, yeah,
in with
yeah.
something too. And so it kind of just puts it in I don't know, a perspective of at the time it's frustrating, but I look back at it later and I'm like, but man, it's just cool for all the experiences because like each person gets their time. You know what I mean? Like my brother shot one that was like a county record up in Oklahoma, and I'm just like, man, I want to kill something like that. And then you kind of have to think back, the more you hunt, going, that's very rare.
Right.
Not everybody shoots anything of that caliber. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, I got fortunate back in 2018 and shot a record caliber deer. But I mean, I'd been hunting for 25 years.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Yep.
Before
And we're
that
gonna touch
opportunity
on that.
happened.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so, so it's just kind of, but you're right. Sitting around camp, telling the stories, and seeing the deer hanging, and they're just kind of reliving that story,
Yep.
or telling you the story of how it all went, and you can see their emotion and adrenaline, and man, it just gets me fired up, man. I just,
Absolutely.
because I mean, if you're true friends or brothers or whatever, I mean, you're happy for their success,
Yep. Yeah. I mean, I got this guy hanging over my right shoulder here. I got him back. It was close to my parents' house, so I stopped there with him, and we were going to do the butcher in there. It was just easier instead of me going home. And I literally remember just like pulling. There was a random folding chair sitting by the garage. I literally just grabbed the chair, sat, and just stared at the deer like as we were getting ready to. And I just like everything starts replaying. You're like, holy crap, I did it! Like literally, you're just sitting there. You just got you're so overwhelmed with all these emotions. You don't even know where to begin.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah.
but now I'm sharing it with my dad, my brother. We're doing the butchering. Like it's the full process at that point. It's and then when you barbecue it or whatever, you're reliving it in a way. The story comes back to life.
Well,
It's actually
yes. I mean, you think of like your first deer. You can tell that story of where you were, what you were shooting, probably what you were wearing to some degree, like it was yesterday. And that's like decades for a lot of people. And so it just goes to show how much of an impact on your life that makes when you can remember something so vividly like that after so many years.
Yep. And that's one point I want to stress. Like if anybody is listening, it's maybe new to the hunting world. Think about that the next time you see a hunter, really just overwhelmed with that smile from ear to ear. That's not just an in the moment feeling. That could be months in the making. That could have been 3 years in the making chasing a certain animal. It's everything we just talked about here. That's what that smile, that's what that emotion is truly showing. It's not just that in the moment. While we're on it, after a successful hunt, who's your first phone call or text?
Oh, my dad, for sure.
Your dad? Nice. Very good.
I mean, that's where it all started,
Yeah.
And so, my he's always my first call.
Very cool. Very cool. All right. I have one more question for you, and then we're going to turn it over to Chris, and we're going to get the second part of the show rolling. Obviously, at this point, you're a very well accomplished hunter. What style of hunter would you call yourself? Do you think you lean more aggressive style? Are you a little bit more maybe laid back and strategic? I mean, if you had to choose a style, what do you think you would label yourself as? You're pushing a lot of beds for the whitetails, or
I would probably say an adaptive hunter.
okay.
It depends where I'm hunting, to how aggressive I get or how reserved I get.
Okay.
Part of it being, depends what the deer density is, how many deer there are in the area, how much hunting pressure there is.
Yep.
Changes my tactics based on some of those. Now, if it's public land and I don't know anything about any of it, then most of the time I'm kind of not going into bedding areas or what I'm assuming is bedding areas. I'm kind of on the edge.
Yep.
More of an observation type thing. If something walks by me, great. but that would probably be the first couple of sits to figure out, pinpoint it, and then diving right in because it's public land. So
Right.
if I blow it out or make a mistake, it's not a game changer for me. I just go somewhere else.
Exactly. Yeah.
Unlike
That's true.
yeah, unlike hunting private land, I'm much more strategic in terms of when I go. Obviously, I use a lot of cellular trail cameras. I let those do the work for me. I don't even go hunt until I've got daylight pictures of something that I want to pursue.
Sure. What brand cell cam are you using?
Well, I was with Spy Point for a lot of years, and I actually just switched over to Stealth Cam.
All right. We're a part of the Moultrie Field team. So if you ever need,
Oh,
if you
nice.
ever feel a need, these new Edge cameras and the second gen that they got going, honestly, they're impressive.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of great things about them. A lot of friends switching to those.
Yeah. So just keep that in mind. We'll hook you right up with our man Joe, and we can get you hooked up pretty good.
Gotcha,
So,
brother.
all right. Producer Chris, you ready, my man?
All right. So I got one question that I ask everybody.
Oh boy, here we go.
All right. What are 3 things that you have to carry with you every hunt? Anytime that you go in the woods, besides your license and your weapon, obviously.
Yeah, my bow and arrow.
But like, what are 3 things that no matter what, they're in your pocket or in your pack?
Well, so a knife is guaranteed. That's every day. I can't leave my house without a knife. But knife, obviously, and that's gonna sound kind of weird, like, yeah, right, who doesn't take a knife? You'd be shocked at how many people I've hunted with that have killed something and did not have a knife to gut it or skin it. It's so knife for sure. Another one is, I mean, obviously release on my bow. I mean, those things are kind of a given, but rangefinder with spare batteries. I always carry spare batteries for like every electronic device that I have in my backpack.
I'll speak to that. That intro credit for the show is me saying, tip of the day, change the battery in your rangefinder. I was at a brand new public spot. I clicked on my first street. It went dead. I was like, well, we're bringing them in close tonight, boys. Top end. Let them have it.
Yeah, because now it's a guessing game, you know.
Exactly.
And and then I would say the other, probably not a have to have, but it's something that I carry with me majority of the time, and it drives me insane if I don't. And this is kind of a weird one. I've actually been asked this on a podcast before, but it's goose down feathers.
Okay.
So you see like the little silica powder, like wind deals out. So I use goose down feathers. I mean, they're like microscopic feathers, which are obviously white. And so I use those because the powders are like those little vape things. I mean, those dissipate after a few feet from the tree stand, but the feathers, I can physically see them for a long ways off. And so to me, I keep that in my bino harness right there. So I'm always checking the wind, because you'd be shocked on when you use a feather like that of you might see it go down 50 yards, 60 yards, and then all of a sudden it starts swirling back up the ridge, and you're going, man, this wind feels like it's just blowing this direction. And it's been a game changer in terms of.
Or you get that thermal and it pulls it straight up on you.
Yeah, because you're sitting there, or I've had this happen where I'll see a deer like come in, and what I don't assume is their direction. I'm in an off wind, and now you can tell they're getting real jittery, putting their nose in there, licking their nose, like, man, what is going on? And then they kind of ease off, and I go and throw it out, and sure enough, I see it just swirl around. So they weren't getting a real good whiff of me, but they could get bits and pieces of it, just enough they knew something wasn't right. And if that would have been a mature buck, he wouldn't have pranced around there.
He gone.
At the time, he'd have been gone. So, so that one's probably a must-have for me for sure.
Chris, I'm gonna hop in real quick. Iron Will had a really good question, and before we get too far into the show, I wanna make sure we ask it. It was back to your tactic style. You called yourself like an adaptive hunter. Iron Will was curious as far as like your tactics in a new area with no time to scout. Let's just call this: you picked a public land spot, you hopped out of the truck. maybe terrain features, maybe like what would you try and key in on real quick on Onyx or something like that?
Food is
Okay.
going to be, I mean, like dense, heavy cover, swampland, something like that,
Yeah.
where I know that they're kind of bedding, and then looking for any like mass trees, like, oak trees, anything mass producing. I'm going straight to those, and then I'm trying to find trails or runs in
Yep.
between the two and set up somewhere in between where
Nice.
the wind's in my favor.
I
I
like it.
try not to ever set directly over food, because what happens a lot of times is you end up with a whole bunch of deer and a whole bunch of eyes on you,
Yeah.
and a whole lot of chances to get busted before the big boys finally filter in. So I always try to
Yep.
sit somewhere in between.
Very cool. Nice.
All right, so now we're going to get into the meat of this. Now, you put it very humbly, a trophy class deer. that, that was a very a humble description. This deer was absolutely massive, and I think beyond trophy class deer. So I want you to walk us through from the beginning your 2018 buck. Like, how did you know this buck was around? Were you hunting this buck? Is it something that you just happen to be in the right place at the right time? Like, walk us through from the very beginning to
Well,
finally putting hands on bone.
so kind of a weird scenario. I actually had some other deer leases, and a buddy of mine reached out to me, and he is like, "Hey, someone reached out to me and asked if you'd be interested on hunting on this lease, or looking for somebody to fill a lease spot." There was like three people, and they were needing a fourth for this property, and it's about 20 minutes from my house here in North Texas. And anyway, and so he told me where the location was, and I was like, "Dude, there's some monsters in there." I said, "Yeah, I'm definitely interested." So he gives me the guy's contact. I reach out, which my first question was, why is he having trouble filling
Right.
this spot? Because anybody that knew this area knew that there was big deer. And so I reach out, not knowing these guys at all, and just explain to them, "Hey, I live, this area. I've hunted all around this area, whatever." And so I get on the lease. The lease starts on November 1st of 2018. So I've already missed archery season.
Right.
Okay. Or, well, the first month of archery season. And anyway, and so the so the other guys on the lease basically said, "Hey, let's all divide up off this map and pick stand locations." We're trying to you the question about trying to speed scout. That's what this turned into, because I'm going,
Okay.
dude, the rut is starting
Right.
like now, and
Yep.
we're brand new to this place. I don't know anything about it. Now, I did have a friend that hunted next to it, and another friend that actually hunted on this property years previously. So, and then they shared some pictures with me, so I knew, some of the caliber of deer, but didn't know what lived or whatever. And so anyway, well, all three of those guys, since I was the last spot, I got the last pick. And anyway, and so they all picked their stand locations. So I go in on November 5th. That was the first time I was able to get down there to kind of do some scouting, put a trail camera out. And I go down, I'm just same deal. I get on, I get on my Hunt Stand app. I'm looking for what I think's bedding, travel areas, ag fields that they might be going to, and trying to just figure it out on a topo map. And anyway, so I draw up some things, and I'm like, gotta get boots on the ground. So I go out there, and I'm kind of going down this little tributary that funnels down to a creek and then some ag fields on the other side. And I get down there, and there's a tree that it's a 10-inch diameter tree, just shredded. And I mean, obviously it's fresh, because it's game time for the bucks here that time of year. And I'm just like, well, this is probably a pretty good spot to put a camera.
Yeah.
So and so anyway, so there was an oak tree there that had some overhanging lower branches. So it was already a perfect licking branch scenario for me. I
Nice.
didn't have to do anything there, and it was already scrape on it. And so I hang a cell camera on it. And that night, I'll have to send you guys this picture, but that night I get a picture of this buck, and his first picture is looking straight at the camera from the no glow flash, but I'm just like, holy
Yeah.
crap.
Yeah.
And I mean, I had no idea a buck like that lived there. I mean, I knew there were some good ones, but nothing to that nature.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh my God, and so I'm thinking, well, it's now the rut starting. So did he just come from 7 miles away
Right.
and passing through, or does he live here? So it was
Yeah.
a whole lot of scenarios of like trying to figure this out. So I go back 2 days later and start putting out cameras in all the other areas, kind of feeding to this to start trying to narrow down which way he's
Yep.
coming from, which direction he's going. And so, but anyway, so I go out, put some cameras, and then I'm just getting nighttime pictures constantly. I mean, I end up getting hundreds of pictures of him. And so I knew the area that he was traveling, and was pretty confident I knew a spot that he was coming from, which is kind of wedged in between two of the lease mates
Sure.
stands.
Yep.
And so but it was all nighttime pictures. So, the lease mates, of course, I share it with them. Everybody asks, they're like, well, did you send it to them? I was like, well, if they're on the same property, they're probably going to see him too. So I
Yeah.
showed them. Of course, they're all freaking out. So they're all in there hunting that first weekend.
Sure.
And I didn't go because I was like, y'all are going to blow this opportunity. Because if he lives here and you start getting sent
Yep.
in the woods, you could blow this deal before, especially a buck that old.
Right.
I was like, you could blow this before you ever get the opportunity. He might stay nocturnal, just breed purely at night.
Yep.
And anyway, but they were in there constantly. And
It'd be
anyway,
hard
so
not to. I ain't gonna lie. It'd be hard not to go.
Dude, it was
Yeah.
hard not to. But part of it is I'm going, okay, maybe if I go, first day daylights. If I would have seen him following some does or tending a
Right.
doe,
Right.
I could have bought into that, because I'm like, that doe's gonna get up and feed. Maybe he brings her, or brings him with her. But all the pictures, he's by himself. I could tell he was basically just cruising,
Yep.
checking does. And anyway, so then I guess the first daylight picture was like November 13th. And then I was like, it's game time. Went and told my boss. I said, hey, I'm putting in my vacation. I put in a full 2 weeks vacation
Nice.
and literally hunted every single day. And now, of course, I would change stand locations based off of, doing hanging hunts or whatever,
Yep.
based off of wind direction. But I had one encounter with him, which was on like November 17th. He comes down this trail, and there's a scrape. This is at the other end from where I originally seen him. This is on the other side of the property, probably 3/4 of a mile away. And anyway, but there was an old trail. There was a doe bedding area off this little creek. And so I was like, man, I'm going to go to this side, because all my buddies were hunting. The lease mates were all hunting on the other side, and the wind direction was going to blow into where I thought his bedding area was. And so I thought, well, I'm going to try a tactic and see if it works.
Yeah.
I'm going to go on the downwind side of that. So when he gets up to check, he's obviously not going to go where he smells them. He's going to go the opposite direction. And sure enough, I see legs coming down the trail, and I can't tell it's him at first, but I go ahead and get ready. There's a scrape 18 yards in front of me. I have some brush where I can get drawn back once I determine if it's him. And the legs come in, and he veers off the trail and goes out to like 45 yards, but I recognize it's him. And he gets to this right at the edge of this opening. He's almost in the clear for a shot. And he turns his head and he looks back towards me. And that was the first time seeing him in person on the hoof. And I'm just like, oh my God. But he's at 45 yards, and he wasn't quite cleared from a tree. So I couldn't take a shot, and I'm glad that I couldn't, because I think I was shaking so bad that I probably would have whiffed it anyway.
Yeah.
And but anyway, so he just kind of scans over the little ravine, turns around, goes right back up the way he came. And of course, I'm just freaking out. I'm just like, dude, this thing's real,
Yeah.
and a lot bigger than I thought that he was. And so then it was like, okay, well, what do I do now? And I was like, maybe he keeps coming back and checking this bedding area. So I hunted there for a couple days and then went back and hunted on the north end where I was getting more pictures of him at night. And I had a lot of does hanging around up there where there was an ag field.
Okay.
And so I was like, man, I'm gonna stick with the does.
Yep.
And so it was Thanksgiving morning. I get up. We were hosting Thanksgiving at my house. And
Nice.
so I was like, hey, we had a lot of people coming in from out of town. I was telling my wife, I said, hey, I'm just going to go just for a couple hours, but I have to go. I'm basically on my last day of vacation. My vacation rolled right into Thanksgiving and I was about to have to go back to work.
Right.
And so I'm out of vacation. It's like do or die, but Thanksgiving notoriously here is like, dude, it's on.
Pretty much.
And so anyway, so I was like, hey, I'll just go for a couple hours. I'll be back by lunchtime, back by 11. And so I go down, get in super early. Deer start moving early. And two of the other lease mates, they didn't hunt. They were traveling out of town for Thanksgiving. Another friend of mine was on the lease. He was back down on the north end where I had seen him, the encounter with him. He was down on that end, like I say, he's about 3/4 of a mile away. And well, that morning he texted me, and I was gonna leave about 9, and he texted me, I guess about 8. I don't know. It's probably about 8:45, 8:40, and says, "Hey man, I just saw the drop time buck, and he was chasing hard on a doe, but he was running south, like towards where I was." But of course, I'm like, dude, that's 3/4 of a mile away in thick woods and vegetation. I was like, there's no way he ends up over here. I mean, they're just chasing all around.
Yeah.
And so about 5 minutes goes by and I hear crashing coming through the woods. And I can't see, I mean, I just see a blur of some deer running. And anyway, so I'm sitting there watching and I'm in a ghost blind. I don't know if y'all know what that is. It's a ground blind that's got mirrored panels.
Yeah.
And they angle down and reflect like the leaves or whatever's on the ground.
They're
so
amazing.
I'm sitting on, yeah. So I sat in that because the wind direction was actually blowing towards me, into my back was up against the creek. So that way I knew nothing was going to be able to come in behind me. And anyway, so I hear this crashing and this doe comes running across this field and she turns and starts running straight at me. And I'm just like, holy crap. And I can't see the buck yet, but I can hear grunting back behind her. And anyway, so she runs, and I mean, I'm talking, she is beelining straight towards me. And so I kind of get swiveled in my chair, a little more of like, dude, am I about to have to kind of
Right.
And and she stops 8 yards from me. I mean, I'm talking right in front of me. I mean, I can see her eyelashes. And she turns around, she's looking back, she's panting, I mean, crazy hard. And I hear grunting. And of course, I'm looking, I'm sitting like this right here looking at her, and the deer's coming from this direction. And I'm trying to look as hard as I can out of the corner of my eye because she's so close. I can't turn my head at all. And anyway, so I hear it running, getting closer. Well, she bolts and takes off and kind of like loops around this tree. And so as soon as she gets her eyes off, attention off, I look over and all I see is this rack with this huge drop tine hanging down. And I'm just like, oh my God. And of course, he's in her path. So he's looking right in my direction. And so I get everything knocked and I'm kind of like trying to rotate around to the direction he's coming. And I'm like, dude, if he stops where she just stopped, there's no way. I mean, I can't even get drawn back without him seeing me. And luckily, when she looped around, she took, she kind of made a big circle and he changed his direction to go and cut her off.
Okay.
And so when he did, he was quartering away from me to her. And so as soon as he changed his angle, I drew back and I had already ranged all the trees where I was. So I knew once he got kind of close to each tree where he was. And so he gets to down to the first trees at 30 yards. And I'm like, Matt. And progressively getting louder and he ain't stopping.
Yep.
And he, at this point, he's kind of got his head like down, like almost like he's just trailing. And and just kind of had a real fast trot. He wasn't at a full speed run like he was coming across the field. And anyway, and so that last bleep, he didn't stop. And I was like, screw it. So I knew exactly where he was. It was at 40 yards. I let him just a little bit on his shoulder, let it rip. And by the time he caught up, it went right through the backside of the ribs and out the far side shoulder. And but it happened so fast that adrenaline didn't hit until the arrow passed through. And then I was just like, what just happened? And anyway, well, I see him dip off of this ravine and he takes off where the doe had ran to, but he disappeared. I couldn't see him. I never saw him fall. But I had the Luminox on it, so I saw the pass through. I knew for sure it hit liver. So I was like, he's dead. I don't know when. And so anyway, I couldn't stand it anymore. I waited like 10 minutes. I was like, I've got to get up and go look. Because for one, now I'm getting late from the time I was supposed to leave for Thanksgiving. And so I get up, I sneak over there real quiet. I get my arrow. It's just coated in blood. And so I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to dip around this corner, scan the field, see if I see him. If I don't, I'm going to back out, go have Thanksgiving, then come back this afternoon. And so I cross around the corner of the wood lot, and it's kind of this open pasture. And I get my binoculars, I'm scanning across, and it's some pretty tall, like just native grasses out there.
Like
and
a CRP almost.
His antlers were sticking up out of it.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh my God. So just to walk over to put my hands on him for the first time was just, man, I mean, that's why we hunt. I mean, it's like what dreams were made of. And I was like, I can't believe this just happened. I mean, for one, to be able to ever even see a deer of that caliber, but for two, to be able to have an opportunity to shoot at it, much less how it transpired as I shot him basically on the run.
Right.
Knowing that if I wouldn't have taken that shot, I probably would have never seen him. I'd already put in 2 weeks, dark to dark, every day. And that was the closest he got to me, being able to, or the closest he had gotten. And so, so anyway, of course, I call my dad or text picture my dad, and then I text my wife. And I was like, "Hey, I think I'm gonna be late for Thanksgiving." And anyway, so got it loaded up. Of course, drive in. It's not like pulling up to deer camp, but I drive into my house for Thanksgiving with him sticking out of the bed of my truck, and of course, all my family's here, and everyone's like freaking out. Like, oh my God, what is that thing? It was surreal. My kids got to hold it. It was cool, man.
It's almost awesome. Like that it happened so quick. It almost was a benefit because you just did your second nature. You didn't have time to get in your head. Your mechanics just took over from years on. You did your cycle. You put that pin on there and you just let it eat. I'll speak, obviously not for a deer like that, but just in general, when it happens so quick like that, you don't even think it's second nature.
No, I'm grateful. I'm grateful for it because I felt the experience the few days prior when he walked out at 45 yards.
Right.
And I'm watching him and going, I mean, I'm shaking so bad and breathing so hard. And I do practice that way. I'll run sprints and I'll come back, but nothing. I mean, you can repeat your breathing and being tired and out of breath and all that, but nothing prepares you for an adrenaline dump like that. I mean, it's
no way,
dude. That's why I said, I was like, if it would have happened slower, I probably would have just missed him.
And it's nothing to do with your skill set. It's just your instincts took over, and sometimes that's just the best course of action.
Well, and I can tell you this. So after all this kind of comes out and I start, some people are like, man, I had this deer on camera last year or the last couple of years. People send me pictures and all this stuff. It did come out that one of the guys that was hunting the property before me the year before shot and missed and shot under him.
Ugh.
That's got to be a heartbreaker.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. It's
you'll lose some sleep.
I don't know what would be worse, to be able to, just not get the opportunity at a deer like that, or to get it and then miss.
I think
because you're right. I mean, you just you just constantly blame, like it runs through your head every day.
Yeah.
You know,
There's nobody else to blame.
Well, listen,
Unfortunately,
right.
that's why they
Yeah.
call it hunting, not killing.
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
is
You're
true.
right.
All right.
So
There's so many routes we could take this. Right. I had one quick question. Like obviously now in like the immediate next day or two, it's just chaos. I'm sure your phone's blowing up and everything. Like I was just thinking, like, what does this do now for like your hunting lease? Did you guys have problems with people like trying to trespass or get on the lease? Like how does
we
this
could be
even
here.
happen?
We could be here all
Okay.
day.
Okay.
Yeah.
Understood.
So
Understood.
So basically, one of the local farmers, I walk out. One of the local farmers comes out and helps me load it up,
Mhm.
and he's like, "Man, let me take a picture." I said, "Man, I'd rather you
Yeah.
not." I said, "I don't want it to leak out." I said, "No offense, but I've got 3 lease mates that are still trying to tag out, and if any of this leaks out of this location, they're going to be trying to buy out our lease. We'll
Yeah.
have people poaching, everything
Yep.
else."
Yep.
And anyway, and so he's like, "Oh man, I promise I won't say anything." So I let him take a picture of it in the back of this mule that we loaded it up on. And dude, it wasn't even 24 hours.
Yeah. There you go.
This thing was all over every social media, all the way down to South Texas. And I'm just like, what is going on? And of course, then my family that was here and saw it, they're seeing it, sending it to me like, but I wasn't in the picture. It was just the deer. And so this thing's going viral. Well, then and there's all the speculation, oh, this could be a new state record and blah, 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 and all this stuff. And then it's like, well, hey, why isn't a hunter come forward unless, something's up,
Right.
and so then all the accusations start coming of, oh, well, it's high fence, or, oh, it's they must have shot it illegally if they're not going to come forward and claim a deer like that and all this stuff. And so fortunately for me, one of the local game wardens actually hunted the property next to me, and he was aware of the deer. He had seen it all the time, did a lot of thermal hog hunting and stuff, and used to always see it. And but people were calling him saying, "Hey, you need to check this out. Something ain't right. Why would you not come forward and say all this and whatever?" And so anyway, he was like, so he calls me and he goes, "Listen, man, you probably need to just make a post about it just to clear the air." He's like, "I'm
Yeah.
getting so many calls about this." And anyway, so he goes, "Oh, and for the record," he goes, "anytime you shoot a deer of that caliber, you need to always call me so we can come verify it and blah, blah, and all this." And I go, "Sorry. I mean, I don't
Yeah.
shoot a 200
Yeah.
every year. So
Right.
didn't really know what the proper procedure was."
Right.
And anyway, and so, but I had no idea it got to this, to like that convoluted.
Right.
And so anyway, so long story short,
We got a couple people asking for the score. If you don't mind dropping the score when you're ready.
so it netted 233 and 7/8.
Did you hear that, Zach? Say it again for the people in the back. 233 and 7/8.
Yeah, and so obviously that became instantly the Collin County record.
Okay.
And so anyway, so once I posted the picture, then that started spreading, and then like I say, then I had one of the local podcasts here, Cable Smith with Lone Star Outdoor Show, huge podcast here in Texas.
Good dude.
Yeah, he had me on the show, which at the time I didn't have any social media other than just Facebook that I rarely ever got on. But got on to post a picture of the buck, and so anyway, he had me on the show, and then he's like, "Hey, what's your Instagram handle?" I was like, "I don't have Instagram." And he's like, "Where are you from?" And so
You do now.
So anyway, yeah, so I created one,
Yeah.
and then it just took off. And so then once that that podcast aired, then I guess it had enough reach that I had North American Whitetail reach out. Buckmasters, obviously, it was on the cover of Buckmasters magazine. North American Whitetail, Texas Trophy Hunters, So then they started, asking for all the pictures that I had and buying the rights to them to publish them. And, so I was like, man, I can get used to this getting paid to shoot deer, but didn't realize how hard that was going to be to keep replicating. But yeah, anyway, so it opened a lot of doors really quickly and just to a world that I just went and hunted, man, just because I love to do it, but it, it just kind of became overwhelming, of just all the like attention that it gets. So I ended up having Shills reach out. They paid to have a replica put in their local store, showing Collin County record and for their store here in Collin County.
So
and,
that's cool.
yeah, so just a lot of stuff like that. But yeah, man, it was. I mean, I don't know. I'm just a dude that grew up loving to hunt and got lucky being in the right place at the right time.
Nothing wrong with that, man. You got it done. It was Rack Magazine, correct? Just for everybody that didn't know.
Yeah, Buckmasters has a magazine called Rack Magazine.
Okay.
You got to be careful when you look that up on the internet.
True that.
Now, don't do it at work.
I do want to talk about that for a minute. How did that conversation go? Because I mean, I still get magazines. Let's face it. I mean, I'm an analog guy in a digital world, but I remember this magazine, like that magazine cover. How did that come about? Like, did they reach out to you, and they like how does that whole process even start?
Well, so the first one started with one of the editors for Texas Trophy Hunters called me. I don't know how he got my contact, but I'm sure they know enough people in the Texas Parks and Wildlife. They probably looked up my license and whatever. So anyway, he calls me and was like, "Hey, this is so and so with Texas Trophy Hunters. I wonder if you'd be interested in doing a article for our Texas Trophy Hunter Journal." And I'm like, "Yeah, absolutely." And so I sent him some pictures, and so they published a deal on it. And then I had then the next one was Buckmasters reached out to me, and they asked to do an article, and they said, "Well, hey, as of right now, your buck." I'm sorry, this was Buckmasters, and they told me as of right now, your buck's going to make the cover unless something bigger gets shot. And I was like, "Oh man, that's awesome." And so anyway, so I go ahead and do the story. I send them the pictures. Of course, they're like, "Hey, you can't send these pictures to anyone else if any other publications reach out to you because we're buying the rights to these." So I send them those. Well, then shortly after that, North American Whitetail reaches out to me, and they were like, "Hey, we'll pay you for these pictures." And of course, I was like, "Hey, I've had to sell these," and they go, "Okay, well, send us the pictures that you didn't send to them that they have rights to, and we'll see if those are quality enough for us to do a publication on." And so I sent them to them. They're like, "Oh yeah, these are good." They come back and say, "Hey, right now, because it was the largest deer killed in Texas in 2018 for gun or bow in all of the state." And so, but North American Whitetail is going, "Hey, right now, this is probably going to be in the front running for making the cover of North American Whitetail." And I was like, "Dude, this is incredible." I'm like, "Oh, I'm about to get sponsors. I'm like the greatest hunter ever." And so it's like all going to my head at this point. Like, I'm gonna start my own TV show. And anyway, and so well, then shortly after that, they called me back and they said, "Hey, just want to let you know you are going to make one of the center articles of North American Whitetail, but it won't make the cover. We just had Luke Brewster shoot a world record." And they're like, "It's still going through the drying period, but right now it's 300. It was 100 inches bigger than mine." And I'm like, "What?" And so anyway, well then shortly after that, it's the butcher buck up in Kansas.
Yeah.
He shot his was like a 313. Luke Brewster's was like a 330. And so there was two 300-inch deer shot that same year, so I was out of that deal. I mean, like I say, I still got like a center article in it, but yeah, they come in and
That's
stole that
wild.
thunder real quick. But
Yeah.
but it still made the cover of Buckmasters, which was pretty awesome.
You got a little shout out from Jackie himself too, right? I saw that.
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
pretty cool, man. There's nothing wrong with that.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't
He's
even.
a
I'm just.
legend.
I can't even imagine. Just like you're saying, like what just happened? I went out Thanksgiving morning, and what did my world just turn into? It's on. I love it. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, you know, because I start think, you know, I play back a lot of that in my mind of like, what would have happened if I would have known, you know, would have been able to hunt opening weekend,
Right.
you know, and we're all piling in there because of a deer like that and overpressure him, and it pushes him to the neighbors, or he gets hit by a car, or the neighbor shoots him, or he just goes purely nocturnal. I mean, there's a hundred. That's what I'm saying.
Sure.
Is, you know, it's, I mean, granted, you got to hunt where big deer are to have a chance at shooting a big deer, but at the
Exactly.
end of the day, it's a lot of luck. You know, being in the
Yeah.
right place at the right time, and just a lot of luck.
Right. Right. Even just take a 150. If your area, your state doesn't have a 150, there's no
Right.
reason to let that 130 pass. You better empty the quiver on that bad boy. Go
Dude,
get it.
I get asked that question all the time. Is, hey man, I want to, where can I go hunt? Or they'll send me a map of something and say, hey, where do you think the big deer are in here? And I was like, well, first of all, what you need to do is look up how many Boone and Crockett's have been shot
That's
in your
it.
county,
That's it.
and then we can start there. I was like,
That's it.
because at the end of the day, if you're not hunting where there's genetics for really big deer, then the chances of shooting one, regardless if you're doing a full blown management program, feeding them protein, whatever, I mean,
Mhm.
if they just don't have the genetics to get there, I mean, it's a 1 in a million, you know. I mean,
Exactly.
there are some freaks that
The
you
freaks.
see
Yeah.
these monsters come out of nowhere and you're like, what was this thing born from? But it's, you know, you gotta be in the game. You gotta be where there's big deer, you know,
Yeah.
to shoot
Has
them.
there been any sponsorship or job opportunities as a direct result, of this harvest that you're happy that came along and you're still working with them in like the
Yeah.
outdoor industry?
Yeah, so like I say, it kind of opened a lot of doors, met a lot of new people, a lot of them real good friends now. Um, and you know, and so obviously I got a sponsorship deal through Spy Point, because at the time I was using Spy Point cellular cameras. And of course, when they saw the picture, they're like, hey,
Yeah.
one on the team, you know. Um, so I was with them for several years, and then Noom Outdoors,
Yep.
they do hunting apparel.
Yep.
So and how I got to know them, because I wasn't familiar with that brand. I mean, at the time I was wearing Kuiu, but before that it was all, you know, Realtree or
Yeah.
Walls camo from
Yep.
Walmart or something,
Yep.
you know. But where I met them is, so how it works, and I found this out too because I didn't know this either. But when you shoot a deer that's the top three for your state, then you go to a region, or for your area, your region, you go to regionals. Well, so obviously mine won regionals, and then if you're in the top three for that, you go to the state awards, which I didn't know this, but you can win state for deer hunting. But anyway, and
That's some redneck shit right there. I love
yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah,
That's only Texas stuff,
that's
I
right,
think.
boy.
That's Texas
I got a leather jacket, white
Yeah, that's
tail.
right. And yeah, and so I know you are kind of laughing, but I actually do have one from it. It's
That's
got like
awesome.
What?
yeah,
That's awesome.
yeah. So anyway, so you get invited down to the state awards, which take, you know, the top bucks that are typical, non-typical, top 8 points, top, you know, whatever. And so anyway, that was down in San Antonio. And so I go to the state awards, and of course I win state because, like I say, it was the largest in the state that year. And so I go down to state awards, and you know, I'm getting all kinds of free stuff and medals and letter jackets and or state jacket, whatever you want to call it, and all kinds of stuff. And anyway, so they had a lot of exhibitors there because a lot of it's ran through, you know, Texas Parks and Wildlife, and Texas, or Texas Deer Foundation, all this stuff, um, but it runs through the Texas Big Game Awards, and so I go down there. There's all these vendors. Well, the Numa guys were there, and they have what's called Trophy Scan, and it's basically like y'all probably seen it, but it does like a 3D imaging of the
Yes.
antlers, and they can make real life replicas of them based off of this 3D imaging. But it also does true bone scores on it.
Okay.
So there's no deductions or anything. It's given a true total score. And so they're going through that, and they're like, "Hey, have you ever thought about joining our team for represent Numa, like our brand? We're just kind of new, getting started out, whatever." And I said, "Man, honestly, I haven't heard of them, but I'm open to try anything." And so he's like, "Well, I'll send you some stuff if you like it." And we ended up becoming all really good friends, and got on board with them, and have been with them since. So
Very cool. My dad had a question actually. How old was this buck?
he was 5.5.
5.5. Okay.
Yeah, no, that's always the age old question is going, man, what would he would look like at 6.5, but
It's at
so
that fine line of, as you start
well
dropping off.
well, I can tell you, he wasn't getting a pass from me.
No.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
No.
and
I probably would have given him another year. He could have grew a little bit.
well, I will tell you this. So later, like I say, I start talking to some local guys that had him on camera, and they start sending me pictures of him. And one of the neighbors had pictures of him for a while, and so he sends them to me. I didn't even think it was the same deer.
Okay.
And I mean, I'm talking. He probably had. So when I shot him, he had 27 scoreable points. Dude, he probably had 40 points on him the year before, and a ton of palmation, no drop time, but a ton of palmation,
Really?
more mass. So it was weird. It was like he widened out, but thinned out. I'll send you guys some pictures of it.
Yeah.
It's incredible. And honestly, I wouldn't have known it's the same deer, but he started pointing out. He's like, man, he's got rip in his ear from fighting. He's got a scar down his nose, and there was
Yeah.
one like on the inside of his leg, which were like dead giveaways.
Yep. Yep.
But antler wise, I mean, you could see some similarities, but it looked like a different deer. And
Yeah.
anyway, and so he actually would have scored more the year before.
Right. Well, that's what I was saying. Like, to my knowledge, that 5-6 year range, it's a crapshoot. You're kind of rolling the dice almost. Like, if you're able
Yeah.
to manage a property, but like you said, a deer like that, you're shooting. Doesn't matter.
Yeah,
There's
he
no
wasn't
letting
getting
that
past
thing
me.
go. No way. What do you got, Chris? We really haven't had too many questions. Everybody just was soaking in the story. Honestly, when you got done with the story, like, oh, that's awesome, great story. So nice job delivering. I'm sure you've told it a bunch already, but good job.
All right, so I do have a couple questions. So now, everybody looks at it as once you climb, and I've said this quote myself. It's once you climb Mount Everest, you can only see that view for the first time once. After shooting this deer, how has hunting? Did it change anything for you? Did it change your perception of what you're looking for in deer hunting? What's your mindset been in the seasons following this?
Well, I'm a realist, right? I understand that deer like that don't come along but once in a lifetime. That's why it's called a once in a lifetime buck.
That's it.
And so, granted, the genetics are there. He had already bred. Obviously, he had bred the years before. And so the genetics were there. And yeah, with age, there's potential that one could come in. But for me, it turned into going, I just want to shoot either the most mature buck, that's out there, or something that's cool, like,
Right.
like a super cool, like gnarly like 6 point or
Yeah.
you know, or something with just like a lot of cool character that's like easily recognizable, you know, like I've kind of always had a thing for drop time bucks, you know, but you know, for me, it wasn't about really, oh, okay, well, I'm not shooting anything less than 200-inch deer. Because trust me, I don't just sit out there just to sit out there. You know, I have a mission, and that's to harvest something, get meat in the freezer, and if it happens to be a giant, great. If it doesn't, I mean, I'm cool. Because the next year, um, actually the next year I ended up shooting like a coal buck. He had like 11, like 12-inch spike on one side and like little 3 points on the other. He was all jacked up. He had a broken leg from injury. And of course, you know, people were like, "You shot that of all things?" And I was like, "Well, for two reasons. For
Yeah.
one, I really didn't see any other bucks that I wanted to pursue that were all, you know, they were all still real young. I was like, for two, he was injured. For three, he needed to get out of the herd.
Yep.
And four, I was coming to the last days of the season. So you know, that's how that
We
ended. But yeah, I mean, and so, but you know, after that, like I say, my drives, you know, had kind of always been, you know, search for the oldest, most mature deer if I don't see a giant. Obviously, if I find a giant, I'm gonna try to come to a strategy to get on him. If I don't, I'm trying to find the oldest. If I don't, just something cool and irregular or whatever, you know. But really, what's driven that after for me is it kind of changed my perspective because I kind of felt like, you know, I've hit that highest of high. I don't expect to see anything bigger than that. So for me, it's now really getting my daughter, you know, to move up the ladder, you know.
Yeah.
So like I say, each year she's shot in a good buck, and every year she's shot in one, she shot one better each year. And so
nice.
so that's kind of what drives it for me is now a lot of the scouting and planning I'm doing is trying to set her up to get on a good one. So
All right,
Very
now
cool.
now the hardest question of all. All right, so when are we going to get you to Africa now?
There you go.
man, I tell you what, that has been a bucket list for me. You know, another bucket list for me is to do a mule deer hunt. You know,
Ooh,
of all the things, I've never hunted mule deer, and you know, so that's a bucket list for me too.
okay, all right. Well, if you want to go to Africa, say the word. That's an annual trip for us over here. So,
Oh, right on. Yeah, no, it looks incredible, man. I don't know that I'd ever come back.
That's
That's,
what Chris was
that's
saying.
exactly what I said.
That's what he
Well,
was
I mean,
saying.
especially when you see what the world's becoming over here now. You know,
Yeah, it's true. That is true.
Yeah.
Elections matter. We'll leave it at that.
No doubt. No doubt.
Don't drink to that, no doubt. Gentlemen, I don't know, man. Chris, what do you think, man? Any questions in the comments I missed?
I don't know. I didn't really see any. So
No, like I said,
think we
everybody
got
was
it
really
all
just
covered.
taking in the story, to be honest, Chad. So it was a good show. I think we'll start wrapping it up. What do you think, Chris?
Yeah, Chad, if you could tell everybody where they can find your content.
Well, so everything I try to keep it simple. So everything's Chad Allen Jones. My TikTok that I've on my like 10th account now. My 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 Instagram's Chad Allen Jones. My Facebook page is Chad Allen Jones. There's actually two of them. One of them still my old one that I got banned out of, and I can't access it. But I try to report it, and they won't take it down. But and then my YouTube is Chad Allen Jones.
All right.
All right. Well, with that, Chad, dude, thank you for coming on tonight, and thank you for sharing your story. Like, you know, we could sit here all night and shoot the shit about hunting, and this is exactly what we got into this for. This is exactly why we started the show, is to sit here and hear stories from people that are out there doing it. So, from all of us, thank you for taking the time out to sit with us, tonight.
Yeah, yeah, thank you.
This was
Thank
pretty
you
fun,
guys.
so.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's great catching up, obviously. And, hopefully we, the next phone call we're on, you guys are telling y'all story about something similar. So Season's coming up quick.
That's it.
Oh,
Moving in quick.
you are not kidding. So with that, everybody, thank you for tuning in tonight. Chad, again, thank you. Dave, as always.
All right.
So
I'll take
with
that.
so with that, we're gonna wrap it up. We'll see everybody again next week, right here at 8:00 on Pursuit Live.